and welcome to this webinar co-organised by the UK-Japan 21st Century Group here in the UK and the All Party Parliamentary Group in the UK for Japan. We're delighted to have colleagues joining us today from Tokyo and elsewhere in Japan, as well as a number of colleagues from around the UK. We're particularly pleased to welcome Ambassador Suzuki, who has just recently begun, I was going to say his term is maybe his second term in the embassy in London. Ambassador Suzuki has been a senior figure in foreign relations for Japan for a very long time, a very influential and impactful diplomatic figure who we are delighted to welcome back to the UK, where he previously served in a more junior position some years ago. We had an excellent welcoming reception last Thursday night, for which we're all very grateful, and we look forward to hearing what Ambassador Suzuki has to say about the UK-Japan trading relationship. I'm also particularly pleased to welcome Marco Forgione, and I'll introduce Marco properly just before he speaks, but we're delighted that he will be our main speaker today, and he will be taking part in the question and answer discussion following the introductory speeches. We will also welcome Ambassador Julia Longbottom from Tokyo in around 10 minutes' time. She's able to join us briefly. We're very grateful for her making time in her diary to join us today as well. And the format for today will be a contribution from Ambassador Suzuki, a contribution from Ambassador Longbottom, and then the primary contribution from Marco Forgione. Can I also welcome Sir Mark Hendrick and the All Party Parliamentary Group for Japan in the UK Parliament. So Mark was recently elected chair of the All Party Group. Really delighted to have him in that position at a very well attended meeting of the group, with many of the new members of Parliament elected this summer joining the group for the first time. We're really pleased to be holding this meeting jointly with the All Party Parliamentary Group. We hope that can be the first of many such joint ventures over the coming months and years. And we look forward to hearing from Sir Mark at the conclusion of our discussion this morning. I should have said that my name is Jack McConnell. I'm a member of the UK House of Lords. Previously served as First Minister of Scotland. I've been a member of the UK-Japan 21st Century Group board in the UK for 12 years now, the longest serving member. And I've just taken over at the request of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. I've just taken over as the chair of the board in the UK, following 9 years' service from Lord Andrew Lansley, who chaired our board over these recent years. And I want to publicly thank Andrew Lansley for his considerable contribution, not just to our group, but to UK-Japan relations over that time, where we have seen the two governments come closer and closer together in ways which we have all welcomed and many of us have argued for many, many years. So we're delighted today to be hosting this seminar, this webinar with all these new people in place, and some more tried and tested individuals with us too. And very grateful to those of you who've joined us in the morning in the UK or in the early evening in Japan. I would like to start off by asking Ambassador Suzuki to make some introductory remarks and to repeat my very warm welcome to him for his period as ambassador in London. Ambassador Suzuki.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me to this timely webinar today, only 10 days prior to welcoming the UK to the CPTPP. First of all, I would like to express my deep appreciation for the kind arrangements of Lord McConnell, Ambassador Longbottom, Sir Mark, and Mr. Forgione to make this happen. And thank you to all those who are joining this webinar today. Let me take this opportunity to first walk you through the significance of the CPTPP and UK's entry into it. The TPP, the original version of the CPTPP, was first negotiated in the midst of an increasingly challenging situation, primarily centering on the WTO. It was signed among the 12 original member countries, but when President Trump took office on the first day of his presidency on January the 20th, 2017, the United States withdrew from the agreement, making it almost moribund. Nonetheless, driven by the belief that the CPTPP was fundamentally in the interest of Japan and the region, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reached out to those close friends, such as Prime Minister Turnbull of Australia, Prime Minister Hook of Vietnam, and persuaded them to engage in further negotiations. I was Prime Minister Abe's private secretary and witnessed up close his Herculean efforts to save the agreement. As a result, the CPTPP was agreed upon by the 11 remaining TPP members and entered into force in 2018. The significance of the CPTPP goes beyond mere economic interests. The TPP is not only about tariffs on beefs and porks. President Obama used to say to Prime Minister Abe, its geopolitical significance exceeds far beyond one carrier strike group. That was what President Obama used to say to Prime Minister Abe. Regarding its economic impact, I know there exists a certain skepticism in the UK to the effect that the CPTPP would add just 0.04% to GDP. Here, I'd like to present to you another perspective. With the UK joining the CPTPP, the total GDP of this CPTPP grouping will become almost equal to that of the EU, which is almost 15% of the global GDP. Its total population will become over 500 million people, far larger than that of the EU, and the Asia-Pacific region is the fastest growing region in the world. On top of that, the CPTPP itself is expanding. It's a living agreement. It's not static at all. The UK's accession is the best example of this, and I am very much convinced that the CPTPP has great potential for UK and Japanese businesses by creating new flows of goods and new supply chains that we have not seen before. Japan and UK should work together within the framework of the CPTPP, given our status as the two biggest economies among the member countries. In this context, in my view, there are two main issues that we have to tackle jointly in the years to come. First, the expansion of the membership. During the UK's accession process, it showed a clear commitment to the high standards of the agreement, demonstrating UK's strong track record of compliance with existing trade commitments. That is why Japan, as the chair of Accession Working Group, tirelessly supported UK's accession. There are many countries that aspire to join the CPTPP. What is important is that all potential members show the same commitment and demonstrate their track records of compliance as the UK did in its accession process. In September this year, Indonesia, a leading member of the ASEAN, applied for membership. Indonesia is a comprehensive strategic partner for Japan, sharing fundamental values and principles. And I personally welcome its application and hope it will gain much support among the CPTPP economies. Japan and UK should work side by side to navigate the journey, making sure that we are on the right track in our expansion strategies. Second, we have to make the CPTPP to address new challenges. Next year, 2025, will mark the first general review of the CPTPP. Japan and the UK should align and cooperate side by side in tackling diverse new challenges, such as economic cohesion, supply chain resilience. The chapters on environment and digital services should be upgraded to keep pace with recent developments. I am delighted that the UK is entering the CPP in time for this critically important endeavor and is joining us for the work that will define the future course of the CPTPP. As the UK enters the CPTPP, Japan and UK will obtain a new excellent post-Brexit economic framework. Now is the time for the businesses of our two countries to flourish by taking advantage of this CPTPP framework. In this regard, I would like to note that Japanese direct investment in the UK is presently 10 times larger than that corresponding UK investment in Japan. We naturally would like to see more investment from the UK to Japan, taking maximum opportunity of new benefits now available for UK businesses. In addition, as Expo 2025 Osaka, Kansai, Japan will take place next year, opening on April the 13th, we would like to see many British business organizations and local governments visit this expo and familiarize themselves with Japan. With momentum towards a further leap in Japan-UK economic ties, we will encourage British enterprises to expand their business and investment to Japan, increasing B2B cooperation. Let me say one last thing. Yesterday, based on the Japan-UK SEPA, i.e. Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, we announced that by the end of this year, an additional 39 GIs, or geographical indications, for each country will be registered as products under protection in the other country. These include, for example, from the UK side, Ayrshire new potatoes, which I understand originate from the hometown of Chairman McConnell, as well as other quality products such as Gloucestershire ciders. As a result, I believe that the Japanese people will be able to enjoy real British food more than ever before. The theme of today's webinar is very timely, so let me conclude with the hope that today's webinar will help us better understand the opportunities of CPTPP will create for the UK and Japan, and further deepen the trade and investment and business relationships between our two friendly countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Suzuki. We appreciate your presence and the strength of your conviction in conveying your message to us this morning, and we look forward to a long and productive engagement with you in your role as ambassador in London. I can say that coming from a family of farmers from Ayrshire, that my cousins will be particularly happy to hear that their potatoes are now protected under this new agreement. So thank you very much for that assurance. I remember very much as a boy picking those potatoes in my summer holidays from the school. I'm delighted that we are now joined by Ambassador Julia Longbottom from Tokyo. Ambassador Longbottom, we are very pleased to have you join us. Julia Longbottom was appointed British Ambassador in March 2021, so has now served almost 4 years in the role with great distinction and a real impact through these years of strengthening core relationship between Japan and the United Kingdom. And Julia had many previous roles in her diplomatic career, but that included some time as Director of Strategy at UK Trade and Investment, which I'm sure she will be calling on the memory of in her contribution to our trade webinar today. We're particularly pleased to have you join us, Julia. I know you're short of time, so I'll let you begin your contribution, and colleagues, please welcome Ambassador Longbottom.
Thank you very much, Jack, and it's so good to see everybody, and a welcome again to Ambassador Suzuki to London. It's great to have him at the other end. And on the question of geographical indicators, as somebody from Yorkshire, I'm particularly delighted when it comes to real British food that Yorkshire forced rhubarb, not sure how that translates into Japanese, is one of the new geographical indicators. So all good. So I was going to cover 3 topics briefly today on the topic of the CPTPP and what accession means, what the UK's accession means. First, how UK accession to CPTPP fits within wider UK-Japan collaboration. Second, some of the geopolitical and strategic considerations around UK membership. And third, how my team, and you're right, Jack, I was very much an active part of UK Trade and Investment, and we have a very big team from the Department of Business and Trade here in Japan. So I'll say a bit about how we can support businesses to make the best use of the benefits of CPTPP to boost trade and investment between the UK and Japan. So first, on wider UK-Japan collaboration and how CPTPP fits. First, Japan played a really instrumental role in the UK's accession to CPTPP. It was an expert chair of our accession working group. I'm always keen to stress that actually means they held us to very high standards, the very high standards of the agreement, which are absolutely at the core of what CPTPP is. But they were fair and they were honest, and they did a great job of leading the negotiations between all the parties. And Japan was also the first member country to ratify our accession in December 2023, which they acted as a great role model to encourage others to move on with their ratification. And that's why on the 15th of December this year, we will be fully joining. Our accession is also another demonstration of our relationship going from strength to strength. It's one of the many areas where we are working very closely together, and it will be another platform for us to both collaborate, but also to use our influence in the wider world, in this case, the world of international trade, but also there's a lot about the geopolitics that's involved. On that wider UK-Japan cooperation, in May last year, we announced our then Prime Ministers announced the Hiroshima Accord, which turned ours into an enhanced global strategic partnership. And the Hiroshima Accord absolutely provides a foundation for everything that we're doing in the partnership. And our 2 current Prime Ministers have reinforced the commitment to the Hiroshima Accord and their intention that we should be even more ambitious on the back of it. It commits the UK and Japan to deeper cooperation in defence and security, in trade and investment, science and technology, and working together on issues of global importance. In addition, we have our bilateral free trade agreement, as Ambassador Suzuki mentioned, the CEPA, which entered into force in January 21, which is supporting our trading relationship, which bilaterally is worth £27.2 billion in the last year. Japanese investment stock in the UK is particularly significant, worth £86.2 billion. And we're really looking forward to CPTPP boosting that trade and investment relationship even further. In addition, we've announced recently, our two prime ministers, when they met in Rio, that we are establishing an economic 2+2, which represents a further upgrade in the bilateral economic and trade relationship. So in short, the relationship is stronger than ever, and our accession to CPTPP is one part of that picture, an important one. So second topic on the wider strategic benefits of UK accession. I know that Marco will be going into more detail about the benefits CPTPP membership provides to UK businesses. And that's one of the main reasons that we've joined. But there are also geopolitical and strategic considerations that I want to touch on. So first, future growth. And you'll all know that our government, the number one mission for the Starmer government is growth. This region, the Indo-Pacific region, is expected to account for the majority of global growth and around half of the world's middle-class consumers in the decades to come. So our joining CPTPP and deepening our trade relationships in this region is not just about the current economic benefits, but also about accessing the economic opportunities of the future. This includes the hoped-for expansion of the agreement to include other economies in the future. CPTPP was created, or a key sort of founding principle was its expansion, that it should grow. And we're pleased that CPTPP ministers announced in November that accession negotiations would begin for Costa Rica. And as we all know, 6 other economies have applied to join, including most recently Indonesia. It also shows our commitment to the Asia-Pacific region, and the long-term commitment that we've made to this region that we know will be at the centre of many of the most pressing global challenges, from climate and biodiversity to security and international stability. And then third, it's about setting standards. As a trade agreement, CPTPP helps us to work together with Japan and sort of take a lead in setting global standards and rules. The more countries that are in CPTPP, the more the rules of CPTPP are something that businesses will be interested in using, helping reduce the number of rules overall that they need to follow. And having a seat at the table as a member is an advantage for the UK in helping shape those trading rules of the future. It's particularly important as we move to a more competitive and multipolar world in which the multilateral trading system is coming under increasing strain. And then thirdly, my third sort of heading, which is how we in Japan can help businesses access the benefits of the agreement. So the Japan network, by which I mean our embassy in Tokyo and our consulate general in Osaka, has the largest Department for Business and Trade, DBT, team in APAC. So we have almost 50 people here working on trade, investment, and increasingly on market access and market shaping. In a nutshell, DBT provides trade and investment services and practical support to businesses, and the team helps UK companies succeed in Japan and Japanese companies to set up and invest in the UK. On the trade side, we drive UK economic growth through increasing exports to and indirectly foreign direct investment into Japan in key priority sectors. And just on that, I'll say that the Japanese government has a priority now of promoting greater foreign direct investment into Japan. We're working very closely with Japan's Cabinet Office, who are leading on this work, and we're keen to really open up the opportunities for UK companies to establish in Japan, which hasn't always been easy. We also support UK exporters to Japan, new and existing, to grow through individually tailored support and to develop strategic approaches. And we develop strategic approaches to remove sector-specific market access barriers. It's interesting that as we, through the Hiroshima Accord and the kind of key goals that we have to deliver UK government priorities in and through our relationship with Japan, the closeness of the policy areas, the strategic areas that we're working together with the Japanese government on, and the sectors of greatest opportunity for UK businesses are really well aligned. And so we have quite a powerful toolkit, if you like, both in terms of direct support to businesses, but also to help them situate what they're trying to do in the context of wider policy frameworks. In addition, with Osaka Expo 2025, less than 4 months away, we're busy preparing a business program in addition to the public audience facing events program. We want to use the UK Pavilion as a platform to bring new companies to Japan to explore the opportunities, including those unlocked by CPTPP, but also to help existing UK companies to expand their presence using the UK Pavilion to raise their profile. So I'll stop there. I hope that is a good sort of bit of context for the rest of the discussion that you're going to have. But I think, in short, there are a lot of opportunities ahead of us, and we see our job as helping businesses to seize those. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Julia, Ambassador Longbottom, for your contribution. I think particularly helpful there at the end to mention the Expo and the need to raise the profile of that in the UK and to encourage many more people to participate and enjoy the benefits of that participation. And hopefully our group can assist the embassy in that work over the coming weeks. I think that was particularly helpful. But thank you to both ambassadors for their wide-ranging introductions to the discussion that will follow our next contributor, Marco Forgione. Can I just say a couple of things? First of all, that we're taking questions in a Q&A section on the Zoom today, not directly from the chat. So if you have a question that you would like to post, please feel free to post it in the Q&A, and I'll try and spot you and ensure that you're able to come in after Marco has spoken. And can I also just briefly welcome all those former ambassadors and fellow members of Parliament as well, who've joined us today, alongside all the many businesses, academics, and organisations who are taking part. Right, I'd like to hand over now to Marco Forgione. We're delighted to have you, Marco. It's a pleasure to have your contribution, and then to discuss that afterwards. If both ambassadors have to leave, can I thank them again and wish them well in Julia's case for the evening and Ambassador Suzuki's case for the rest of the day. Marco is the Director General of the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade since January 2020. That must have been a challenging time to take on that job, Marco. He's been involved in trade bodies for many years in a wide range of bodies, particularly in the arts and antiques and creative sectors. He is a visiting professor at Aston University in Birmingham, and he regularly comments in the media on trade and supply chain matters. He's someone that we in the UK certainly always look forward to hearing his insight. And Marco, I'm going to hand over to you.
Lord McConnell, thank you for that generous introduction, and I'd like to extend my gratitude and thanks to the ambassadors for their context scene setting with regards to this conversation. So much in life is about timing, and accession to CPTPP at this point in time, convening this session, seems to have an even more additional weight and import than it would have normally had. Just to explain, so the Chartered Institute is an independent, not-for-profit organization established in 1935 with the express objective of enhancing export capability and professionalizing global cross-border trade. The mission, it remains as true today as it was when our founders came together to establish us to deal with the specific challenges of the interwar years in the UK. But we are now much more international in our approach. We look to professionalize, evangelize, and support the professionalization of cross-border trade wherever it happens. And we do that because we believe passionately that international trade is a force for good. It is unique in its capabilities to provide the exchange of thoughts, of ideas, and to help support and grow economies. It's clear. Research shows and evidence proves that businesses which trade cross borders are more sustainable, more resilient, employ more people, are more innovative, and are more profitable. So providing the rules, the regulations, the platform for the trade to flow is essential. And CPTPP and the CEPA with Japan are really important tools in growing that cross-border trade. And particularly at a time when international trade and the global economy is facing tectonic forces, both of geopolitics, but also of trade being part of a weaponization program, and we have the disruption to the global supply chains. I'd just like to cover some of those specific challenges that we face. If we look at the UK, as you said, Lord McConnell, I started in January 2020, and it's been quite a trajectory since then. We've had the COVID lockdowns, obviously Brexit, slowing down of the global economy. Initially, quite a few different trade ministers, then a change of government here. We've got a new commission in the EU. We've got a new parliament in the EU. 60% of the global population has gone to the polls and gone to the elections. And we now have a returning Trump presidency, all of which has had and is having an effect very clearly on global trade. Set against that, we've had disruption to the global supply chain, the war on mainland Europe, and also conflict in the Middle East, all of which has constrained and dealt a blow to healthy, compliant global cross-border trade. And in that environment, it's more important than ever that we look to reshape the terms under which global trade takes place. For some time now, it's been clear that the traditional free trade agreement, the rules-based system on which the world has relied for the last 30, 40 years, is being put under pressure. The WTO, unfortunately, is caught still in stasis. We don't have an appellate body that is working. So there is a move much more to a system of trusted trade. And I think that informs the basis of what the government, previous administration, and with the full support of the new government, has placed on CPTPP. Because, as has been highlighted, the CPTPP area is the fastest growing group of economies. It is the fastest growing middle class. It is technologically a powerhouse in the global economy. And it is environment, it is an area, it is a trade partnership that the UK values very highly. And UK business needs to be awakened to the real potentials and opportunities that exist. And there are some practical examples of great success, but there are a number of challenges. We hosted with Department for Business and Trade during International Trade Week a webinar with businesses looking at free trade agreements and particularly at CPTPP. And the survey there showed that over 55% of the businesses had no sense of the opportunities or the impact or potential of CPTPP. So Expo, I think, is a brilliant rallying point for us to encourage businesses to participate, to come to the region and to understand what those opportunities are. And there are a number of areas I think that we need to pull out that we should be focusing on. One is, of course, has been highlighted, UK's brilliant food and drink sector. In fact, we've got an MSME, micro, small, medium enterprise, with whom we've collaborated. They've won awards for exports, who make mochi ice cream in the UK and are now selling that mochi ice cream into Japan and actually into Australia. But they had no idea that they could use the CPTPP rules of trade from next year. So even those businesses that are currently trading, there is a gap of knowledge and understanding. I think it's a role for the Chartered Institute to play, but also for government and for all of us to act as evangelists to explain repeatedly the tremendous opportunities that exist and the benefits of trading cross borders. As I've highlighted, we know there are economic and societal benefits for us to grow the trade. Ambassador Suzuki highlighted also that 99% of UK goods will be able to trade tariff-free into CPTPP marketplace. In addition to that, the generous cumulation means that the OEMs and large manufacturers get very significant additional benefits from CPTPP trading their goods. And it encourages and nurtures a sense of much closer collaboration between the acceded nations of CPTPP to grow their international trade, to build their supply chains with and amongst each other. As I've said, at a time when global supply chains face unimaginable forces, building a resilient, anti-fragile supply chain amongst these booming economies, these strong partners on a rules-based, standards-based approach, I think gives huge potential for not just the UK, but for all of these economies to help to redefine the rules, the way in which global trade takes place. We all of us as economies face a challenge. You know, the UK economy is at best anemic, and unfortunately we've seen trade even under SEPA with Japan reducing. And so hopefully we will see through CPTPP accession a reinvigoration of that trade flow, because the administration that's coming into the US is going to have a huge disruptive impact on global trade, and building strong, resilient relationships for trade flow, encouraging new routes for trade to take place and growing the marketplace is essential. And this isn't just the UK trading into CPTPP. This is CPTPP nations trading into the UK as we ourselves look to diversify our fragile supply chains. I want to talk, if I may, just a little bit about the specifics of what's happening in global trade and the approach that the Trump administration is having and what that means for the wider global economies in the geopolitical context of what's happening, particularly in Southeast Asia. The announcement of the tariff regime from Trump and the proposed punitive approach to trade will mean that trade is going to be much more on a bilateral basis. And the advantage that gives CPTPP nations is that this is about collaboration, about open, trusted program of engagement. And as we look to grow the economies, to drive that investment, to address the productivity issues, then there will be a shift from the US to other areas. And I think, I feel passionately, we will see not just more countries, but increasing range and variety of nations seeking to accede into CPTPP because of the principles that it has established, because of the processes that enable that free and fair and trusted trade between the nations, but also because it is comprehensive and it addresses two key areas for global trade: digital and e-commerce. And the biggest growth area for global trade is around e-commerce. And having that enshrined within CPTPP shows how forward-thinking it is as a trading community, and the drive for that digital innovation, the collaboration between UK and Japan with our digital agreement, I think is a forerunner of the way in which the global economy is going to be moving. So the UK with Japan are at the very forefront of reshaping the growth of digital trade and digital equivalence, which is essential, particularly on key areas, not just trade, but also safety and security. And I have to declare an interest. We work very closely. We are a partner with one of Japan's largest companies, delivering a support service in the UK, helping trade flow currently between GB and Northern Ireland. And that sort of collaboration is what we need to be encouraging and brokering between UK and Japan and the wider CPTPP community. Another area that's really key for CPTPP, which I think, again, has not really had the airtime that it needs, is the trade in services element of CPTPP. 8% of the UK economy is trade in services. And for our brilliant services community, services businesses, to have the opportunity to trade and have access to not just government programs, but the access to the wider trading services economies of CPTPP will have a huge boost to the UK economy, and a huge driver for increasing the role of the UK as a global leader in trade and services. We're already the second largest exporter of trade and services, and that's will be strengthened through this partnership with CPTPP. The movement of people, the trade in services, the promotion of healthy, compliant cross-border trade are all key aspects of CPTPP, and they were forerun by the close collaboration and close partnership between the UK and Japan. And to Ambassador Suzuki's point with regards to investment, foreign direct investment from the UK into Japan, there is much more that needs to be done. I was delighted to hear that Ambassador Longbottom highlight that we will be promoting, encouraging, nurturing that FDI from the UK into Japan, because through that investment, we both benefit: the exchange of knowledge, the exchange of ideas, and the economic benefits that flow from that trade and that investment is key to supporting the UK economy to grow and overcome its current lethargic state. I want to just conclude, if I may, with a couple of points that I think are really essential for the UK and for the government to face. And those are particularly around ensuring that the engagement with the next suite of accession states encourages the philosophy that started with the initial 11. You know, the UK is the first non-founding accession state. We need to be bold in approaching new countries, to encouraging a diversity of accession, but it has to be on the basis of standards and of rules-based principles, because that's the real strength of this agreement. Because if you have that, then you can really remove a lot of the administrative processing requirements for trading goods, and you free up capital and investment to support those trade flows. So I think that's one key point. I think also we need now, and this is why I'm so pleased to be invited to address this group, but the work that this group does, from flying the flag and evangelizing for the benefits, not just of trade with Japan or into CPTPP, but to encourage UK businesses to have an outward thinking, expansive approach to global trade. I think everything we've seen since Brexit is a reduction in UK businesses trading internationally. Now with CPTPP, as Ambassador Suzuki highlighted, comes into force in 10 days' time, we should be making sure that UK businesses are encouraged, nurtured, and given the information, the tools, and the support to see their role as being global and international, and not just looking at a narrow local marketplace. So the third point I'd like to just finish on, if I may, Lord McConnell, is that we have a long history of collaboration. I worked immediately before this in the art and antiques sector, representing British antique dealers. And there's a long cultural link between the UK and Japan. And we need to do more to promote that cultural link between the UK and CPTPP in Southeast Asia as a key asset, because we are instinctively linked through history, through heritage, and through economy. So accession into CPTPP, the flexibility that gives us and gives UK businesses to either utilize the independent bilateral trade agreements we have or the broader CPTPP is a truly exceptional opportunity. And I feel passionately that if we can get this right, if we can get the engagement correct, that this partnership with CPTPP is not going to just hit the fractions of a percentage point of GDP, but could be fundamental to reshaping, restructuring not just the trading relationship of the UK, but actually to establish the principles of trusted trade, which will inform the way in which global trade takes place moving forwards. Lord, I think you wanted me to finish at 10:02. Hopefully, I'm on time.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you on timing, but also, Marco, thank you for such a wide-ranging contribution and for the passion that you clearly have for not just this trading relationship, but for trade in general. We have several questions that have been posted, and I'm going to try and group them into maybe 4 different quick questions and squeeze them in between now and 10 o'clock. Marco, if you were able to respond to them. And I want to first of all, to begin by asking a question about the EU from Nicholas McLean, who says, as Prime Minister Starmer seeks to expand Britain's trade and investment links with Asia at the same time as strengthening our links with the EU, are there some specific limits to achieving both of those aims simultaneously, e.g. as regards standards or, more specifically, a veterinary agreement with the EU? Will there be conflicts between the UK improving its trading relationship in both locations?
I'm glad you started with an easy one.
More relaxed areas afterwards.
So there are things that can be done under the existing TCA that don't require renegotiation, don't need any amendment or any change. We will help and support and ease trade flow between UK-EU and EU-UK. The biggest challenge, imminent challenge, are the changes to the way in which the UK border operates and what that means for EU businesses trading into the UK. And indeed, I was in Brussels a couple of weeks ago and met with representatives from the Commission, parliamentarians and business. And there's a real fear that a lot of MSMEs in the EU, micro, small and medium enterprises in the EU, particularly in food and drink, are looking to withdraw from the UK market because of fear of what the additional costs will mean and potential delay will mean for trading into the UK. So trying to seek a comprehensive veterinary agreement will take an awful lot of negotiation and agreement and collaboration, but it will have to be done in the context that we have trade agreements with other nations. But the UK has been very certain in protecting its food production standards, and so I don't see a conflict between CPTPP and trade with the EU. I do think that, though, that there are challenges with regards to securing what the government is said they're going to secure with regards to veterinary, or what's known as SPS, a sanitary phytosanitary agreement. But there are things that can be done, particularly around data sharing and digitalization and visibility into the supply chain, which could operate today, which would support and ease some of the challenges that exist in trade flows with the EU. And look, we need to improve the relationship and the trade flows with the EU. It's 21 miles off our coast. It's our closest and largest trading bloc currently. So of course we want to have a better trading relationship with the EU. But as the Prime Minister identified in his speech at Mansion House, that it is never an either or in this. It's not an either or between US and EU, and it certainly is not an either or with regards to CPTPP and US or EU. The UK has a unique position and needs to be leveraging that, both because of our profile, our reputation, the economy that we have, and our traditional trading links that we have, which are global. So I don't see it as an either or, but yes, you're quite right to identify that there are challenges in any of these negotiations, but I shall leave it to the politicians to deal with that.
Thank you very much. That may be a good topic for a future webinar, the joint relationship with the EU. Jack Horobin asks about about Ambassador Suzuki's reference to the low level of UK FDI into Japan. That the Japanese FDI into the UK is 10 times that in the other direction, and he asks if CPTPP might help address that imbalance. And another questioner asks, will UK companies be more readily able to operate in Japan as a result of CPTPP and to invest in Japanese companies taking minority or indeed even controlling stakes? How do you feel about that side of the relationship?
So I think that the accession to CPTPP, but also the bilateral arrangement, the CPTPP we have with Japan, provides very clear opportunity for UK business to invest and to engage fully in the Japanese market and into the markets of the CPTPP nations. And if you look particularly, as I highlighted, around the great work of the digital agreement with Japan and also the training services provisions and access to government contracts that exist under CPTPP, I think that there is huge potential for UK businesses to be expansive and to invest in Japan and elsewhere in Southeast Asia. The challenge we've got, and this is a challenge for all businesses, is that currently they seem particularly risk averse and see investment as something that is being deferred rather than undertaken. So there is an education piece, there is a cultural piece, but there's also an economic piece that needs to be undertaken, and we need to build confidence in UK businesses, build confidence in the impact and opportunities that exist from accession to CPTPP. And I think that will begin to unblock some of that investment. On the counter side, investment into the UK, I'm very aware that there are a number of businesses, Japanese and others, who are deferring decisions on investment into the UK currently because of the situation, the economic situation, and uncertainty. So we need to build confidence and stability in the UK economy and assurance in the UK economy that will encourage investment into the UK, further investment into the UK, but more importantly, should give the basis and the encouragement for UK businesses to really go forth and seek opportunities under CPTPP. And I'm hopeful, really ambitious, that accession is another opportunity to celebrate the opportunities and potential of CPTPP. And I know I'm speaking with colleagues in the Department for Business and Trade. They've got a very structured and energetic campaign plan to promote accession and the opportunities that exist in Southeast Asia.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to try and group a number of the other questions together in a final question to you, Marco. We will share all of the questions with both ambassadors so that they can see the sorts of issues that colleagues are raising and that they might want to address in future events. But there are a couple of sectors that have been mentioned, including our previous chair, Lord Lansley, has asked about SMEs who might not find it easy to travel to an expo in Japan, but might well be interested in making some getting some benefit from this trade liberalisation. So any thoughts on SMEs, I think, would be interesting for many on our webinar today. And there were two questions in particular about education and tourism, sectors that are not necessarily front of mind when we think about the economic relationship with between the UK and Japan, but sectors that are nonetheless very important in both countries. So if you could maybe reflect on SMEs and then on the business areas of education and tourism in your final remarks, Marco, that would be tremendous.
Brilliant. Thank you. So 99.9% of UK businesses are MSME, micro, small, medium enterprises. They account for something like 60% of the employment in the UK. So, they are an important group. But what we've seen, particularly since Brexit, is a number of MSMEs trading cross borders, involved in international trade, has dropped and continues to drop. And there is a particular challenge of trying to encourage them to trade cross borders. Actually, what CPTPP does, because of its approach and the deregulation, particularly and tariff removal, is make it easier and simpler for businesses to trade into CPTPP nations. And we should be making sure that MSMEs know and understand that. And look, there are huge opportunities. I highlighted the small business that's exporting mochi ice cream from the UK to Japan. I think that's a real testament. If you can sell mochi to Japan, there's a huge amount that we can achieve. So we've got to do more in the UK. This is a point we've highlighted, and we've worked with the previous administration and the current administration to try and reach out to those MSMEs and encourage them to see their role, their marketplace as global. But there remains, unfortunately, a cultural issue in UK MSME business leaders where we seem to have lost a little bit of that buccaneering spirit. And again, the challenges they face with regards to deciding to export, go into a new market when they're facing additional costs within the UK, create a tension. So if we can deal with the economics, I think there's a lot that we can achieve for MSMEs. And with regards to attending trade shows and trade fairs, those are an important part, because on the whole, business do business with people. So you making that personal connection is really important. But there are some brilliant technologies now available that would allow a wider group of MSMEs to have a presence at a trade fair and representation, certainly as a first step to exploring the market. And we've highlighted this to colleagues in Department of Business and Trade, and we're hopeful that we can look at more innovative ways of engaging, supporting and promoting UK SMEs in overseas markets. And I know we've overrun Lord McConnell, but the issue of education is one that I feel really passionately about. We are studiously neutral and non-partisan and non-political. I'm just highlighting that to context what I'm about to go into, because I think the previous administration, and unfortunately I think the same is true with this administration, are not understanding how important it is that we make it easy and simple for students from around the world to come to the UK and to study. We have world-leading universities and colleges. We have an education system that is admired around the world. And we should be encouraging and enabling those universities and those colleges to attract the brightest and best minds from around the world world to the UK, because you not only have an economic impact, which is important, but not my priority issue. The biggest issue for me is the cultural link that is built with those students has a huge long-term effect, not just on the relationship with the UK, but actually the UK's role globally. And so I'm frustrated that we're not able to encourage or unshackle our brilliant education system to attract the brightest and the best. And actually, we should be doing more to encourage our brightest and best to go overseas for at least part of their education, to forge those close links for future business leaders. So, sorry, it's a bit of a rant from me, but it's something I'm very frustrated by.
I think Mr. Martin Barrow will agree with you wholeheartedly, because he raises this issue regularly in the 21st Century Group meetings. Thank you very much, Marco. Thank you very much indeed for your insights and your inspiration. Before calling on Sir Mark Hendrick to close our discussion today on behalf of the APPG, can I just thank the companies and organisations that help sponsor the UK 21st Century Group in the UK. We very much welcome your sponsorship and your participation, not least in our annual conference, which does make direct recommendations every year to both Prime Ministers, including the establishment of a 2+2 on economic affairs, which is just finally, after all these years, been taken up by both governments. So we do have an impact and an influence, and if other organisations or companies involved in today's webinar would like to explore more participation with the 21st Century Group, please do let David Fitton or I know, so that we can have that discussion with you. We would certainly welcome an increased participation level as we move into this new era. So Mark Hendrick, delighted to have you here. I'd like to ask you to close the webinar.
Right. Well, first of all, thanks very much, Jack, for inviting me along today. I'm very keen to involve the All Party Parliamentary Group for Japan with this conference today. I'll say a little bit about the group and obviously how we see our role. Our aim as an All Party Parliamentary Group is to introduce Japan to lawmakers here in the UK. We tend to look at building relationships as well with the Japanese Parliament, the Japanese Diet. It's a group that I've been a member of since I was elected here in the UK Parliament in November 2000. So I'm part of the 21st Century Group, so to speak. But also I was very involved with when I was in the European Parliament between 1994 up to the end of the last century. And it's a privilege to have been elected chair of the group. And my involvement has been long, and obviously I'm very proud to hold the position that I do now. What we want to do through the group is actually increase the understanding between Japan and the UK, given that both countries have recently had general elections as well. That means there's lots of new ground for dialogue and lots of new members in both parliaments who I'm looking forward to communicating with, initially virtually, but we intend to send a delegation next year certainly to Osaka for the expo, but also to meet with our counterparts in Tokyo to have bilateral discussions there as well. And in the context of today's proceedings, we will be in the group looking at the opportunities for trade so that members of parliament can see the benefits of the sorts of things we're discussing here today with CPTPP. And as we know, the UK will accede in 11 days' time to it, and traders from the UK will be able to trade with most CPTPP countries and with Australia from the end of this year too. And as I understand, the current situation is that Canada and Mexico have not yet ratified the UK's accession, and therefore UK businesses will still need to be able to trade with these parties until they do so. We believe that joining the CPTPP could, in the long run, increase UK trade by up to £5 billion a year, boost the economy by £2 billion a year, although we know that this is around 0.07% of GDP, which is higher than was originally envisaged from membership of the CPTPP, and increase wages in the UK by anything up to £1 billion a year as well, which is very beneficial. I think all regions and parts of the UK are expected to benefit. And the CPTPP gives the UK a free trade agreement with Malaysia for the first time. The Malaysian economy alone is worth £334 billion. And obviously, we're looking at a population of 33 million people. In a written statement on Friday last from Trade Minister Douglas Alexander, he said, quote, "When the UK accedes, the CPTPP will become a truly global trade deal, bringing new opportunities for British businesses, supporting jobs across the entire UK, and shaping the future of international trading rules." And indeed, that chimes very much with what Marco said in his contribution just now. We're looking at, as he puts it, trusted trader rules rather than necessarily just relying on the WTO to set the framework of how we operate together. We expect it to have long-term economic benefits for Japan as well, obviously, including a 2% increase in its GDP by 2025. And in terms of investment protection, it provides greater certainty and protection for investors, while also preserving the rights of governments to regulate and to legislate. There are some geopolitical risks involved. Obviously, it could help reduce those in East Asia by acting as a deterrent against countries that may pursue coercive policies, but I won't go too much into that. But safe to say, we're very, very keen to get involved with the 21st century society and our counterparts in Japan. But obviously, we're very keen as well to look at the efforts that are going on in the direction of trade. And of course, that is the context in which we discuss it today. Thank you very much, Jack, for inviting me along today. It's a great pleasure to be here and listen to the exchanges that we've had from both ambassadors and indeed Marco. And look forward to working with you in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's going to be good to be working together over these coming months, and it's going to be an exciting time for the UK-Japan relationship in general, not just in trade, as the world changes dramatically around us in these months. Then the strength of our relationship in trade and defence, in diplomacy, in climate action, and in so many other areas is going to be absolutely critical. And with new prime ministers, new governments in both countries in 2024, then we go into 2025 with many challenges ahead, but with a good head of steam from recent years to build on this relationship and make an impact at home and abroad. So thank you very much to everybody for joining. Thank you to the ambassadors and their teams. A huge thank you to David Fitton and Heidi Potter, who organised the webinar on behalf of the group, and a massive thank you to Marco Forgione, who was our lead speaker and so brilliantly managed to cover so much in our trading relationship and the potential for the future. So please join me in thanking Marco, and I wish you all the very best of the day or the evening, whatever lies ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.